it comes to our models, we always want to add that little bit of realism. With our trains, we add drivers, we add passengers. Our stations, we have seats, we have guards, we have sound. And when it comes to our road models, we tend to do the same, which can be quite difficult with some of the diecast stuff that's out there. So what I'm trying to do at the moment is I'm trying to find ways of bringing life to my models. And back in 2016, I went through a process in a video of how to use this enamelled wire to add LED lighting because it's really thin and it can be hidden. So here, this trailer has two red lights on the back. So if I do that, then you can see I've got two red lights on the back, and I've also got headlights on the front. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to show you how to do that on another model that I've got here. These were bought very, very cheap. This one had some damage on the bottom, so it's actually been completely repainted. The trailers are the same, but the cabs are actually different. And one has a mirror missing on one side and one has a mirror missing on the other. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to find out how the models come apart, and sometimes that can be the most difficult part of this process, because we need to find all the screws and we need to take everything to pieces, which again can be quite daunting. I've taken obviously this one apart, so I know how this comes to pieces. So these have little light bars, which is what we're going to use. So the first thing I need to do is to take off the wheels of this trailer. Screw here and a screw here, and I believe these are all this. No, they're not all the same. So we'll keep the screws separate. The reason I want to take off any plastic bits is because I'm going to be using some super glue, and I'm also going to be using a soldering iron. So I want to try and prevent any damage to the pieces. So I'm going to take the wheel set off. This is also a good time if you've bought second-hand models to give them a good clean. I don't know whether you can see on the camera, but there's a little bit of dust inside this one, and there's dust between there's dust in between the wheels. So I'm going to get a little wipe, and I'm just going to give the model a good going over just to try and get the dust off. Again, this will also hit when we come to do the glue. I also want to put back together some of the pieces, just so that I can remember where each of the screws go. So I'll loosely put things back where they should go. So just a couple of turns. Same for the top ones, just a couple of turns, just so that I remember exactly where these screws go. as they are slightly different sizes, so it could cause damage. Especially if you do a project and it takes a couple of days. If you were doing a painting project, you would want to make sure that the screws sit either labelled or in the right place. So now we've got that apart, we can then go to the cab. Again, the cab has 2 screws in the bottom. This is definitely one of the easier models to take apart. And again, we've got a different size screw here. We've got some dust in there, so we'll just give that a good clean. Again, you can't get to that without taking this apart. So this model is slightly different to the way that this one was. So I've actually got the 2 LEDs just at the bottom there. This one seems to be completely solid, but that's not a problem. We can work on that. Because we do want headlights. Again, I'm going to put a screw just so I remember which screw goes where. Okay. And put the wheels so that they sit. So again, each of these wheel sets is different, so keeping them in the right place. Right, so how are we going to get light to the lights? I think what I'll do is drill a little hole and fit the LEDs exactly how I fitted these ones. So I've got a little pin vise. I'm also trying to do this where I'm causing as little damage to the outside of the model as possible. So I'm trying to be as invisible after a few minutes with the pin vise, I've now got two clear holes, and the light lenses fell out. They weren't held in all that well, so they actually fell straight out. And I'm able to get the pin vise right the way through with very, very minimal damage. There's no damage to the actual front of the lorry. The only place that you're ever going to see that the LEDs are is underneath. So that's me now got holes. We know the position that we're going to put our red lights, because we've got them on there. So now we need to get our LEDs ready. And this ultimately is going to be the most difficult part. I am going to be using this very, very fine wire. I think it's even finer than the stuff I've used here. This stuff is easily got on eBay or Amazon. It's quite cheap. And now we need to pick our LEDs. So we need some red LEDs, and I believe that these ones are my red ones. I should have one that has a sticker on it which indicates that it's red. And we also need some red ones there. I think that's the red ones. Yes, that's the red ones that I used. LEDs come in lots of different sizes. These are one of the sort of the bigger ones, and these are the even bigger ones. These are 50/50 LEDs. The very small ones are 0402, which is 0.4 and 0.2 millimeters. I think these are 3 to actually no, they're 12. Yeah, I'm not actually sure what size those ones are. 1206s. 1206s they are, which is 1.2 millimeters by 0.6 millimeters. So we're talking about things which are fairly small. And we're also going to use one white LED. And I think I'll use these ones, which are 2835, so they are actually quite a bit bigger than those ones, which would be 2.8 millimeters by 3.5 millimeters. And here comes how I actually work with these. What I've got is I've got some masking tape facing up taped to my soldering block, which is just a piece of cork. So we need 2 of those. And I need 2 of these. Okay, so we'll have a look at how we're going to place these. So as you can see, they are incredibly small. And yeah, so they are going to go over the hole like that. So now we want to find out which way round our wiring is going to go. At this point it doesn't really matter. But it's always good to double check. So I'll show you on the slightly bigger one. What I want to do is I want to put my probes one way round or the other way around. I'm on the diode check setting, which is also the continuity. And what will happen is one way the LED will light and the other way the LED won't. And that tells us our polarity. So you see there. So I know that the bigger pad, in this case, is going to be my negative, and the smaller pad is going to be my positive. On these ones, we've got a little arrow. So we've got a bar and then a line, and some it's an actual arrow. So we've got a bar and a line, so we know that the line is our negative and our bar is our positive. So the line, the negative is the little sticky out bit. So now that we've got that, we've got a mental note that that's what way around our wiring is. We're going to think of how we're going to route the wiring. So as you can see here, it's the wiring goes into these little holes, and on this one I've got the same little holes. So because it's the really thin wire, you can hardly see where that is. So now we'll get our soldering iron on, and I'll start thinking about my wire length. So I need 4 about that length, and I'm not sure you can even see that. And as I say, this is enamel coated wire, so it's fully insulated along its length. So there we go, I've now got my 4 wires for the back of the trailer. And the reason I'm using 4 wires is so that it doesn't matter which way around I place them when I glue them. As I say, these are tiny, so using a little bit more wire helps me because I don't have to really care about the polarity until it gets to the connection end. Now, the instructions on this wire says that you don't need to clean the end, but I tend to anyway. And again, I've got that slightly tacky surface. And I've got very fine solder. I could do with even finer for this. And I just want to get a tiny bit of solder onto those pads so that they're shiny. And I'm using a little bit of flux, which is what all the smoke is, just to help, because you want to have as little heat going on to the possible. Now, what you're supposed to be able to do with this wire is burn off the enamel coating, and it should go just shiny at the end. So we should just be able to now fix that on, and we'll do the same with the other one. So we've got that one, and then I'll just rough up the end. It just makes it ever so slightly easier to get the solder to actually burn off the coating. Okay, so that appears that we've stuck. So now I've got a tiny LED on. Now I can try and scrape off quite a bit more of this end so I can test it. So we should, now that we've scraped some of that off, and what I'll do is I'll actually put some solder on the end as well. Now this wire is so thin that you can actually burn the entire wire away. So right, I think that's me got that tinned. And of course what we want to do is we want to make sure that we've got a good electrical connection on that solder joint at the other end. So there we go. So as you can see, that is now ready to go on. So I'll pop that over there, out the way, and then we'll do the other red one, exactly the same. Little rough up. Little bit of solder. Just enough heat so it sticks. You've got to remember that most of this is plastic, so I've got my soldering iron set quite hot at the moment to burn off the coating. Just enough to there we go. So again, I'm testing each one as I go. So you see, I don't think I've got one. I do. So there we go, that's that one now. Illuminated and working. Now these are quite delicate because it is tiny wire and tiny LEDs. So now it's just like the bigger ones where you might be able to see a bit more of what's going on. Okay, so this one we need some more wire. And I'm not going to take such a long piece this time. And again, I'm still going with an individual piece of wire for both the positive and the negative of each of the LEDs. Flux helps me have a bit more working time with the solder to help burn off the end. Cool, that's that one. And with these LEDs being slightly bigger, it's a little bit easier to get them to stick. So that's me got a warm white, fairly bright LED for one of the headlights. Just rolled a piece of wire. So I'm trying to use my setup to help me. So you see I've got my solder pointing up using the actual solder almost as a third hand. And then I can just barely see that that's gone silver on the end. So we can go. And that's that one. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to clear up a bit with the soldering stuff, and then I'll be back. And so there we go. So as I say, we're screwing into plastic, so we need to be aware that it needs to feel nice and smooth. If it's not smooth, then we could be damaging something. So that's now the lorry done, the trailer done, sorry. And we can do the same test again. And one way around, these should be nice and bright and work as brake lights. I can tame that down obviously by putting a resistor on. What I'm planning on doing is maybe using something like an Arduino and having two circuits, one bright, one not so bright as brake lights and tail lights. Okay, so now we've got that done and we've got our headlights ready to go back on. So I want to put these back in. I will eventually eventually glue these back in, but for testing I'll just put them back in. Because I don't want to use super glue for these, because I don't want them to go cloudy and spoil the work that we've done by putting the light to go through them. We want to use these. My other option is to use 5-minute resin, the epoxy resin from Poundland probably. I've still got to test that to see if it actually works for making it look right, but that's my plan for the future, and I just want to be a bit of original glue residue. Doesn't want to go back in properly. Okay, we'll leave it like that just now. I'm getting confused with those broken wires. Right. So again, this is just like we've done before. We know where our screws are. Wheels go where, so we've got the ones with the spacers for there and then the ones without. So we want our wires to go away from them, and then I want them to kind of come about there. So again, you can see how invisible our modification actually is, with only those two tiny wires coming out. And now we want to pop this in. I want to bring our other two wires around and down. So we want to be quite gentle, because as I say, these are rather thin wires. And then I want to put them in there like that. So now I've got 4 wires coming down. But 2 short ones and 2 longer ones. Know that one of each is going to be positive. We should have some light somewhere. The lorry now back together, and I've got all the wires, I'm leaving them as they are just now because I'm not sure how they're going to go on the layout. So leaving them like this allows me to be able to choose later. Try and get these ones on as well. So it is a bit fiddly with the very thin wire. And then there's the headlights on, and I haven't put the other lens back in, but I'll do that. If you did like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you're not already, please subscribe.